Hello and welcome to this Upgrade Your Sound product showcase. My name is Kurt Witt with Music and Arts. I'm really excited to spend some time talking about the Strobel lineup of string instruments made by Eastman. We've got a special guest joining us from Eastman Strings product manager, Sara Merkelbach. Sara is here to discuss a couple of key models, share some unique insights into what makes Eastman Strings unique, and of course, answer any questions that might come up during the presentation. You can see some Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen. So at any point during the session, you can post a question and somebody will be able to answer you. During this product showcase, I have a group poll or two that I'll launch and get some feedback from the audience on some different subjects. And we can also get some feedback on those subjects from our expert panelists. The Strobel lineup of strings is incredibly popular, ranging from both students to teachers. We're going to dive in depth into three particular models and hear from our expert, Sara, on why Strobel is a great choice for the advancing orchestral string player looking to upgrade their instrument. So welcome to Sara, and take it away.
Hey, Kurt, that was some really happening music that you had on there. Really got the spirit going. So thank you so much for having me on this special evening. I wanted to give a little bit of overview about Eastman Strings before we begin going over some models. So what's really unique about Eastman is that we follow a tradition that's over hundreds of years old, really dating back 5 centuries, where we use knives, chisels, and saws just like the old Italian makers like Strad and Guarneri. And then in the 19th century, the Germans created their own technique of violin making, kind of more of like an assembly method, which requires more luthiers making one single instrument. And makers would graduate from simple carving to advancing into specific techniques such as carving tops, carving backs, and then even going to the top into varnishing, which is very complicated. To this day, Eastman follows those traditions to make the best instruments possible at all levels. This is beginner through professional series. We use the best materials possible from all over the world. This is Chinese woods, European, Bosnian, German, Italian, poplar from Canada and Italy, African ebony, as well as Indian ebony, just to name a few. So I guess I wanted to go over a little bit about why we step it into an instrument from our student series. So Eastman makes the Strobel 80 and 100 as well for music and arts that are amazing handcrafted student instruments. When I started at Eastman 14 years ago, I could not believe the sound, the big sound that the student instruments produced. Student instruments do not take you to the next playing level and can really limit a player's sound and playability. So student instruments are made with thicker plates and thicker lacquered type varnish that is made for durability. For example, beginners start in first position here, and then when they're ready to advance into more technical playing, they start shifting and getting into harder playing throughout the whole register of the instrument. So step-up instruments tend to be crafted with better skilled luthiers, higher graded woods that enhances the tone and makes playing so much simpler when you're trying to get through harder passages. Strings are very complicated and hard to learn, but it is so important to give the player a chance to succeed and make the best experience possible to help them continue on their playing. Sorry, Kurt, do you want me to go on to the 700 series?
Yeah, just a quick question, Sara,
Sure.
about the tone and playability as you advance up from that student instrument.
Mm-hmm.
What is the player likely to notice? Is it in the quality of the sound, the ease of the facilitating technical playing? What are the examples that the player is going to notice?
Honestly, it's all of those. So when your wood is graded in 3 different ways, or how we grade wood, and it's B quality wood, A quality wood, double A, and then triple A, which we use on our master series instruments. that give the best response, best tonal response. So when you're getting into higher graded wood, the instrument just kind of opens up for you, almost plays itself. Whereas with a student instrument, because it's got thicker plates and thicker varnish, it tends to kind of mute sound. So you can tell when a player is getting really frustrated into shifting positions on their student instruments that it's time for an upgrade.
I have a friend who calls that the fun factor. So the instrument really lets you express yourself and lets you, the sound you hear in your head, you can get that from the instrument. And as the fun factor goes up, then your performance level then also goes up. Is that true for violinists?
And it encourages practicing. I mean, the violin is a super hard instrument, as well as viola, cello, and bass, string instruments, period. So keeping the player continuing on, I think, is very important.
That sounds great, Sarah. Tell us a little bit about the first model. So you've got the ML700, I believe.
So this is the ML700 here, and it's made in our advanced luthiers workshop. And these are luthiers who've worked with the company for over 15 years. You can kind of see the back there. The series is made of German tone woods specifically, and German tone woods tend to produce a very mature sound. And whereas Chinese tone woods on the student level instruments are a brighter, sound that's not as mature is something that you get for European quality. The 700 model here is patterned after Guarneri. So it takes a more advanced player to play on this, but once you've got the notes going, it gives you a really edge and very mature sound. The 700 series is for a player that's looking for, or advancing player, even a collegiate player going into college. Looking for a more serious instrument that's even across the whole register. Music and Arts worked hard to outfit these instruments as well, because we got to remember that the instrument itself is only half of the instrument, that there's bow included and then also a case to protect the instrument.
So really, Sarah, when you're talking about that 700 series, this is the best craftsmen using the best materials and the best total package to combine for a really, really high quality instrument. That's got to be a real challenge for the parent and the student, because they basically all look pretty similar from 30 feet. And so really getting up close to it and hearing the difference. How do you recommend a player tests a new instrument? So say I'm going into a music and arts store and I'm a parent and my student is going to try out a new violin, thinking about upgrading. How should they go about testing that instrument?
So the best case scenario, when I used to work music and arts events, the string showcases in person, what I would do is I would recommend the student to bring in their student instrument along with, I'd say, 3 other step-up instruments to try out. So you have them play their student instrument first, and then hand them the first model, upgraded model, and have them try it. Have them try something, a different model with different types of woods to kind of get a feel of what they're looking for. And then also I would recommend them using their bow that they're most comfortable with, because then you can always advance after that, after you pick out your instrument. So I think even sometimes it helps to have a player who plays the instrument. So, when you get stuck between 2 instruments, you're in the room and you can face the other side of the wall and have the player play for you. So you're not judging on how the instrument looks specifically. I know that's important, but most of all, I think, is the tone.
And what should the player play? Is it should they be playing in the upper register, middle register, and low register of the instrument? Should they be playing fast or slow? What advice could you give a player as to what to play?
So I think starting slow, I know it can be kind of an intimidating process, especially when you have, admin coming in and teachers coming in to help you. You're in front of your parents, so it gets very stressful. So something starting out with a simple scale, just making sure that your notes are long, that you're actually listening to the instrument, that you're not paying attention to where your fingers are going at all times. And then depending on your level, if you know how to shift, then you can continue on from there. So a lot of times at these events, I'll see kids kind of, you can't really hear much sound, but if you use your whole entire bow and put pressure on the bow with your index finger, then you really hear what's coming out of the instrument.
Yeah, so of course we're here on, you know, computer speakers and iPhones in your case, but tell me a little bit about your experience with that instrument. So you just played a little bit on it in the lower register. Tell us about how you feel it vibrate, how you feel it resonate, and how you kind of hear the tone coming from it.
Really, I have a strong bow hand. Some people say that I'm a little aggressive on the bow hand. Some aren't, and that's okay. So I think starting in first position, I really listen to the tone. You know, how it resonates in your face and under your chin. It can sound a little bit different than it does outside, and that's okay. But another thing is comfort. How it feels to you. Is it easy to play? Not complicated? And sometimes all that can take is changing out the strings too.
So the key feature of that instrument, the German tone woods, and you described it as a very mature sound. And so what would be the characteristics of a mature sound? I hear it as very well-rounded and
Yeah,
very rich.
even throughout the whole register. So at this level, you should start shifting. If not, that's all right also. But to make sure that the instrument or this instrument tends to give like a well-rounded sound, like you said, a very mature sound, meaning that it's been around, like it sounds like it's been around for a couple hundred years. So everyone wants that old sounding instrument, and that's something that the 700 series can give you.
Okay, yeah, beautiful sounding instrument and beautiful looking instrument. Well, I'll ask you about the finishes a little bit more. So the next step below that model, I think you have the 500 series there also, don't you?
Yes.
So maybe the player isn't quite ready to go all the way up to the 700 series, either not quite advanced enough, or it doesn't fit in the right budget. The 500 series then is kind of the next step below that. So give us the overview of that model, Sarah.
So the 500 series is wonderful. This is actually where we start our hand antiquing. So you can see that it's got the look of some rub marks here, like it's been around for a couple hundred years old. You don't really want an instrument that looks nice and shiny when you're stepping up into a new one and playing in chamber, orchestra, and advancing, because you want that instrument to seem like it has history. Just like in the professional symphony orchestras, they're all playing 100-year-old instruments, and you won't see a shiny, bright red instrument in that orchestra, similar to like a student rental. So this is where this series is very, very beautifully crafted. It's European tone woods. So this can be a round of Europe in Europe. So it can be from the Swiss, the Alps, just whatever woods we have possible. You'll notice that it's got a little bit more flaming too than the German tone woods. And that's aesthetic compared to the 700 as well. Let's see. So this series is for a really serious player looking for an instrument that has a very clear and focused sound. So, and again, we start hand antiquing to make it look old. It's normally, yes.
And that hand antiquing process, that actually is that takes a lot of skill, I'd imagine, because you can't put too much on or too little. It has to just be very consistent across the whole instrument. That's got to be an incredible amount of skill, Sarah.
Yeah, so it actually takes about 9 layers of varnish. So when we get to the second layer, third layer, that's where we really start our hand antiquing. And you want to make sure not to hand antique too much to where it looks too stabby and marky, too deep into the instrument. So I really like the way we antique instruments. It looks very natural. And on this level of instrument, we use the spirit varnish, which is an alcohol-based varnish, and it seeps into the instrument a bit different than how a student quality instrument would, which is more lacquer-based for durability. So this type of spirit varnish, just like the 700, seeps into the instrument, and it doesn't clog up the pores. So it allows the instrument to breathe and really project.
And this type of varnish process, this is the same way that violin makers have been doing this for hundreds of years, isn't it? You're talking about an organic product and what you do to coax the tone out of the organic product. That technology hasn't changed ever, has it?
Right. No, for Eastman, it hasn't. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So give us a little bit of the player's perspective of this instrument. So now you're talking about European tone woods, which could be from a larger region, and you called it a very clear tone. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell us from the player's perspective what that sounds like, and maybe give us a little demonstration, Sarah.
So a clear sound, you don't really hear the in-betweens of each note. It's precise. It's very clean sounding. So I'll go ahead and demo so that you can hear this. And excuse me, I just put strings on this instrument. So remember, before you're giving a concert, not to change your strings, the couple days before, to at least wait a couple weeks until, so you allow the strings to stretch.
Yeah, I noticed definitely a difference in tone, even though, again, we're just talking about computer speakers and computer headphones. It not better or worse than what we heard, but definitely not quite as powerful maybe as the German tone woods. And again, tone is very subjective, isn't it, Sarah? What sounds bright to you might sound dark to me, and what sounds thin to me might sound full and robust to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so the German series, the 700, sorry, I didn't get to play too much of it, but it does have that robust, thick sound, just well-rounded and full.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful sounding instrument. So what would be a a kind of characteristic of the type of player that might look for that 500 series instrument? Somebody that's maybe getting into high school, becoming a little more serious, maybe playing in their area honors orchestra.
Yeah, honors and chamber orchestra when you're getting into the more advancing groups, where you know how to tune your instrument. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's one fine tuner here, and there's purpose for that.
Yeah, tell us about why that's included at that level of instrument.
So you'll see this on the 500 and the 700 as well. So fine tuners you'll only see on the E, because we're not adding weight. We don't want to add weight to the instrument, which can affect the sound or the tone and string length of the instrument. So we keep it in here on the E, because the E is a very precise You got to get it right in tune. And sometimes it can be hard to hear and hard to tune with the pegs. But that is the reason why we don't install 4 fine tuners like we do on the lower models.
That makes sense. I'm curious as to now the kind of care and maintenance as you step up to a nicer instrument like that, because there's some associated importance now with keeping the wood, the proper humidification and clean and so forth, where the student instrument built for durability can take a little bit more abuse, can it? But tell me a little bit about what goes into proper maintenance of an instrument at this level, Sarah.
So it being a more sensitive varnish, it is going to take a lot more maintenance than your student instrument. So I would recommend wiping it down after each use for rosin buildup. Right now, this is really clean. But I have seen when I used to work at a store that there was rosin buildup and it had to be professionally taken off, which can cost a lot of money without ruining the varnish. So a lot of cleaners and whatnot, you want to be careful on the test spot on your instrument, such as like heel tuner or heel cleaner or polishes. You want to be careful not to use it on the whole instrument at first because you might damage it. Humidity should be around 30 to 40%. And you'll notice in these cases, as you go up levels, that there's a hygrometer here. So it kind of tells you where the humidity levels are at. I know in certain climates, it's a lot worse for instruments, such as I'm going to say the East Coast, around New Mexico and Colorado. It could be Midwest. It could be very, very extreme. So you want to make sure that you don't have your instrument under vents where temperature is constantly changing. You don't want to leave your instrument in the car because that could cause varnish crackle. And when it gets over 140 degrees, then the instrument could start coming apart because the instrument is glued together with beef hide glue. And the purpose of using beef hide glue is so that the instrument could come apart. It's allowed to come apart. It's supposed to come apart. And having it that way prevents cracking.
Okay, so the care and maintenance of this is really essential, and as you would expect with an instrument that is really built for sound, and it requires a little bit more upkeep by the player. But hopefully, as that advancing student is moving into the instruments, they've got a little bit more responsibility, and it's a kind of pride of ownership for those students as they're stepping up to that better instrument. And ironic that the instrument is made to look like it's aged, but yet you want to keep it clean so that it remains looking aged.
Right. Even the finest of Stradivarius, they got to well maintain their instruments.
That's great. So I think you've got one more instrument to show us. So the 300 series, which is kind of the first step in that step up process for that advancing student. And this instrument now looks quite a bit different than the other two, doesn't it?
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so this is the ML700, and you'll notice that it's a shaded instrument. It's not quite antique yet. You also see that it's very nicely flamed. And this series comes in either Chinese flame tone wood, which tends to have a brighter tone sound, or European tone woods. Whatever the best source we have at that time, we'll use on this series. But you will notice that it does have the integrated fine tuners into this tailpiece here, composite tailpiece. And yeah, dominant strings is a mid-range strings that we use on 2 of the models. The 500 has the upgraded gold E string by Orchestra. And they're a mid-range string, so not too bright, not too mellow, just right in the middle to give a great tone for the instrument.
How would you describe the tone wood characteristic then of this instrument? So we had the 700 series, which was the German tone woods, very, very robust sound, very full sound. We had the 500 series, which was the European tone woods, very clear tone, very present tone. So now where does the 300 series fall in that tonal spectrum?
So I'm going to say that the 300 is a bit crisp, a little more crisp, something that you're going to really tell the difference when you're jumping in from a student instrument that might sound muffled into something a bit more a bit more spiky and
It's a little peppy, like a sports car, maybe.
crisp and bright, I would
Yeah.
say the 300 model is.
Okay. And I'd imagine for a student that's been playing on their instrument, which might feel just a little dull sounding, they immediately pick up this instrument and think, wow, this is really like a little sports car.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very easy to play compared to your student instrument, so that's something that everyone recognizes right away. Yeah, it's a good little instrument here.
Well, let's hear just a little bit on that instrument.
All right.
Yeah, so beautiful tone, and I'd imagine the crispness of the sound makes it really easy for an advancing student to play because the tone just jumps right out of it.
As you can hear, right? I know it's hard to hear through speakers, but
Beautiful instrument. Well, it's actually surprisingly easy to both see the differences in what you played and hear the differences between that 500 or 700, 500, 300. There's you mentioned the 500 and 700 series were also the more luthier people that have been there a long time making that. The 300 series is done in a different process then?
yeah, so these people are about 10 years. And I'd say actually that the 700 series, those makers can go all the way up to 25 years from really when we first started Eastman Music Company.
Okay, so that combination of the better woods, better craftsmanship really result in that better tone and better package. That makes complete sense. I know you've got one other instrument there, something you guys developed about a year ago that I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, the electroacoustic violin. And this is super interesting, Sarah, because I think when most people think about electric violin, they think about kind of Jean-Luc Ponty and something that looks very strange, but you're showing me this electroacoustic violin and it looks just like the other instruments you've shown me.
Yes, so the electroacoustic is actually your traditional instrument, but you have the option to plug in, and it's very, very discreet on where you plug in, and there is a purpose for that, is that we wanted it to be allowed in orchestra. So orchestra directors would look at it and know that it's their Eastman. So here is the jack right here. And it goes into the tailpiece or through the end button. And the pickup is actually installed through the spruce top, very discreetly, not connected to the bridge or anything like you'll see on most pickups. I used to play on another pickup where, they'd clamp here, and this is a very unnatural area for an instrument to be clamped, and it could muffle the sound. And then, I had wires going through the bridge, and it just was not fun. So some people would question, so doesn't it poke your neck here? And actually we have a special cable here, a 10-foot cable that comes with each electroacoustic series that snaps in right here, 2.5 millimeter, can't even tell. And it's very, very flush to the instrument. So you can see here, it doesn't bother my neck at all. And then on the other side, we got a 1/4-inch jack to plug into an amp.
So this opens up the whole world of possibilities for the acoustic violinist, right? Now you can use a looper pedal, you can add distortion, delay, chorus effects, you can record, you've pretty much opened up your whole world here.
Right. So, rather than using 2 instruments, you have 2 and 1, so no electric violin needed. Um, Other than plugging in, we have done a study during these crazy times, and really it resulted in 3 findings. So the intonation issue solved, which basically you could plug it straight into a tuner, and when notes are out of tune, it'll let you know, so you're not hearing it, it's not hearing any, picking up any outside noise. The second thing being, it encourages practicing, which is super important. I know during these times it can get very dull practicing with yourself. You're not around other kids to play. So maybe you didn't get that first violin part. Well, now's your chance to plug into an amp, have fun with a looper, play with both parts, and have kind of create your own orchestra. And then thirdly, playing without disturbing anyone. So really you could plug into any mobile device using something like some interface, like a iRig2, whatever you find out there, and add one of those thick mutes onto the bridge, and no one can hear but yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. The whole world of recording possibilities is opened up for the violin player. Does the pickup process and the extra weight on the jack, does that alter the feel for the player, or is it such a negligible change that you really don't even notice it?
You really don't even notice it. And if I play it here, you can't even tell the difference. And I know, again, the speaker thing you can't really hear, but I highly encourage you just to try an electroacoustic series and really compare it to another traditional instrument. You won't notice a difference.
So just to be clear, Sarah, this is your regular Eastman made violin with this additional technology built into it that that converts it into an electroacoustic model.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Was that was that a tough challenge to get orchestra directors to buy into this idea, because they're very traditional, aren't they? And the thought of a student playing something other than just a regular traditional violin must be a little bit of a challenge for them.
To tell you the truth, I grew up playing traditional. I'm a very traditional player. So having all that weird stuff on my violin really bothered me. But one cool thing that I introduced to orchestra directors that they really liked was that, when schools start opening up again for everyone and you're playing around the classroom, kind of strolling around playing, watching everyone, you want your orchestra to hear you. So we do offer 3-foot cables that you could plug in directly, and then you could kind of stroll around the classroom being heard through an amp. So I thought that was pretty cool. There's lots of orchestra directors that were really turned on by that.
Yeah, that's a neat idea, so that the teacher can actually be heard above everybody else instead of basically at the same volume. Or I'd imagine if you're a violin player and you want to play with the jazz band at your school, this now gives you a way to be amplified and to play above that, or in a pit orchestra, or in some other capacity where you may normally not get the chance to play. How important, that actually leads me to another question I had, Sarah, about the versatility of these instruments, and how important is it for players to be able to utilize these instruments in all styles of music? Because as a violinist, I'd imagine the more well-rounded you are, even if you're not going to make music as a living, but to play in community orchestras, to play in pit orchestras, to play in jazz groups if you can, or pop things, or on your own. These instruments have to be incredibly versatile for the players today, don't they?
And really they are. Like, I mean, I can play this thing in any style. With a fiddle player, it's just flattening the bridge just a tiny bit. And, just little things like changing out the strings can really accompany, what style playing that you need it for. But it being set up the way it is, I mean, it's perfect for anything. And, the possibilities are endless.
So Sarah, I've got one more question to ask you about, and this has been so interesting. I really have learned a lot about these instruments and the differences between them. What other things should that advancing violinist be looking for in terms of accessories or other components to upgrade as their playing improves?
So one thing that you always want to carry with you are an extra pair of extra strings. You never know when an accident might happen, especially right before a concert. Like it's scary when you're having issues and then all of a sudden a string breaks and you don't know what to do. So having a couple packages of strings, and you want to make sure that it's the same kind. You don't want to mix nylon and steel strings because then you kind of get weird sounds coming out of the instrument. The other thing is an extra bow or maybe multiple bows. It's good to have a couple of bows for when you have to send in your bow for a rehair. It's good to have a versatile bow compared to just your wood bow. Carbon fiber bows are good for outdoor playing. Wood bows not so much. And then that I just wanted to show you one bow too, the cadenza that comes with the 700 series. It's actually carbon fiber in the inside and then wrapped with Pernambuco veneer. So you're kind of getting both the best of both worlds. So I own one of those bows as well as wooden bows. And really with a wooden bow, it gives you like a really warm, calm sound. And then with a carbon fiber stick, it really gives you an edginess to the sound. And so you don't have to worry about it warping too much.
Yeah, I'm sure we could spend another couple hours just talking about bows
Yeah.
alone, Sarah. I couldn't wait. Well, this has been super interesting. Sarah, I'd like to thank you for joining this product showcase about the Strobel line of
Sure.
instruments that Eastman makes. I think everybody will agree these instruments are fabulous and among the top step-up choices available today for players of all levels. During this Upgrade Your Sound showcase, we've got a few special offers that I'd like to make sure everybody's aware of, including 48-month financing. So this is the first time Music and Arts has been able to offer 48-month financing. You can get this financing at any Music and Arts store or offering online through Woodwin and Braswin. You'll receive some follow-up email information after the session for how to go about receiving that. You can choose the financing, or we have another special offer with 15% off instruments over $199. That offer runs through the end of the month, and 48-month financing runs through the end of the year. If you have more questions, this showcase extends in stores through the weekend, where you can visit your local music and arts store, speak with an instrument expert, learn about the lesson options we have available, the repair options, and to put your hands on these fabulous Strobel instruments made by Eastman. Thanks again for joining this instrument showcase and learning a little bit more about the Strobel lineup made by Eastman. And Sarah, thanks so much for your time, and
Thank you for having us.
enjoy the rest of your day.